The case of Carlill v. Carbolic Smoke Ball Company is one of the most famous cases in contract law. It established key principles regarding unilateral contracts, acceptance, and consideration. The ruling clarified how advertisements could be legally binding in certain circumstances. Facts of the case. The Carbolic Smoke Ball Company manufactured and sold a product called the Carbolic Smoke Ball, which was marketed as a remedy for influenza and other diseases. The company issued an advertisement promising a £100 reward to anyone who used the smoke ball as directed and still contracted influenza. To demonstrate their sincerity, they claimed to have deposited £1,000 in a bank as proof of their commitment to paying the reward. Mrs. Carlill, upon seeing the advertisement, decided to give the smoke ball a try. Following the instructions carefully, however, she contracted influenza. Consequently, she claimed the £100 reward, but the company refused to pay, arguing that the advertisement was merely a sales gimmick and not a legally binding contract. They also contended that there was no formal acceptance of the offer and that there was no consideration from Mrs. Carlill. Issues before the court. Was the advertisement a legally binding offer or just a mere invitation to treat? Did Mrs. Carlill's use of the product constitute valid acceptance of the offer? And was there consideration from Mrs. Carlill to form a valid contract? The Court of Appeal ruled in favor of Mrs. Carlill, holding that the advertisement was a unilateral contract and legally enforceable. The key points from the judgment were: first, the advertisement constituted an offer. It was not merely an invitation to treat, but a clear, definite promise. The deposit of £1,000 in the bank reinforced the seriousness of the offer. Second, acceptance was through conduct. Unlike a typical contract that requires explicit communication of acceptance, in a unilateral contract, performance of the conditions, that is, using the smoke ball, suffices as acceptance. Third, consideration was present. The inconvenience and effort of using the smoke ball as prescribed provided sufficient consideration. Finally, the contract was legally enforceable. Since the terms were clear and reasonable, and Mrs. Carlill met the conditions, she was entitled to the reward. Legal principles established. First, unilateral contracts. A contract where one party makes a public promise that can be accepted through performance rather than explicit agreement. Second, acceptance by conduct. When an offeror requires performance instead of a promise as acceptance, simply doing the required act completes acceptance. Third, consideration. Consideration need not always be monetary. Inconvenience or effort can be valid consideration. Impact of the case Carlill v. Carbolic Smoke Ball Company remains a landmark case in contract law and is often cited in cases involving advertisements, unilateral contracts, and consumer protection. It ensures that businesses making public promises cannot evade liability by claiming their offers were not serious. Conclusion. This case solidified the doctrine of unilateral contracts and offer and acceptance principles in English contract law. It remains one of the most important precedents in legal studies worldwide.